Now, as the governors-elect gather in Abuja to be anointed with their certificates of return, you'll have to hope that at the back of their minds, or perhaps in front of it, is the fact that Nigeria, home to Africa's largest economy and biggest population, has a big problem. And the word in local Nigerian parlance is Japa, a Yoruba word meaning run or flee. And in this context, it represents the wave of Nigerian people leaving or intending to leave the country for new places. Nigeria, of course, has a high unemployment rate, especially for young people, a rate that's projected to go even higher this year, according to the latest assessment. So what plans should Nigeria's new leaders on both the state and the federal levels have for job creation and to curb the challenge of brain drain in this country? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the policy strategist, political commentator, and group CEO of the global investment and trade company, Baba Yusuf, and by the international economist, political and business analyst, and CEO at Business Africa Events Limited, Christian Udechukwu. Thank you very much indeed to both of you for joining us. And let me come to you first, Christian. You've obviously been looking at this issue of brain drain that we call Japa in Nigeria. What are the main factors driving young Nigerians away? I mean, we know there's a lack of jobs and opportunities, but does the answer lie in the gap between Nigeria's population growth versus its rate of economic development in a country where 70% of the population is under the age of 30?
Well, yes, Charles, thank you for having me on the program. I think your question captures quite a lot of the answers already. The problem of migration, or the opportunity to migrate, is as old as humanity. It is the reason the world is the way it is today, because people migrated from where they were in search of new places, new territories, for reasons that are economic, adventure, and the search for justice. And so people have migrated in Nigeria to all over the world for a variety of reasons. Initially, most of the host countries were not particularly happy with the number of Nigerians migrating. But over time, a lot of countries are significantly beginning to appreciate the skill sets that they bring. Of course, there are one or two oddities in terms of people who are perhaps uncouth in their behavior overseas and may in some way reflect poorly on all the other who are heavy performers. But overall, Nigerian migration to Europe, to America, to parts of Asia have been significantly contributory to the economic advancement and development of those nations.
To the detriment of Nigeria?
Well, yes, but you see, it's a two-way track. The first one is that those who migrate migrated perhaps in the early 70s and 80s were those who felt perhaps that the opportunities here were not quite suited for them, and they were perhaps persuaded that it was easier abroad. And those who were the best and the brightest stayed back in Nigeria and joined the civil service, joined the enterprise economy, and became captains and leaders that we have today. Now, what has happened lately is that perhaps since the 1980s, the structural adjustment policies and all began to force people to rethink the idea of staying in Nigeria. It has not worked well for some sectors of the economy where some of those skills are very highly needed, and they moved when they did. But the beautiful thing is that Nigerian economy and educational system is sufficiently robust and professional enough that when those people migrate, they find that they're easily assimilated into the economic systems in their host countries. And so, for example, on an annual basis, the last global remittance figures from the IMF World Bank that keep tab on the formal numbers, almost 800 billion. In fact, 794 billion was remitted by migrant workers resident in all the over 200 countries and territories around the world. Now, India got the biggest chunk of that money, 100 billion, and that was followed by Mexico, 60 billion. China, of all countries, got 51 billion. Right. And I mean, Nigeria gets About $25 billion. Now, if you look at our annual budget in Nigeria, which is probably just over $30 billion, given our exchange rate valuation today, and you consider the fact that we Nigerians in diaspora bring in perhaps something in the region of 70 to 80%, depending on the exchange rate at the time, of what would be equivalent to the Nigerian budget, so, then you can see that there's an argument for us to focus on human capital as Nigeria's greatest asset, keep the ones we can at home, and export the ones that we must.
Okay, well, that from that point of view, you have a point. But Baba Yusuf, of course, there is a lot of emphasis on higher education, university degrees, etc., in Nigeria, which is seen as a way out of poverty. So we're seeing a lot of highly qualified Nigerians, doctors, engineers, etc., who are faced with a struggling economy and an economy that has a very high unemployment rate.
Yep. And the reason is not far-fetched, Charles. Over time, the economy, has not been synchronized with the evolving policies, if you want, of various administrations or dispensations that came on. Let's take from 1999, excuse me, to date, looking at all the policies that were put in place by successive administrations vis-a-vis, youth empowerment. And you made a very important point with regards to focus on higher education and all that. But even with that, Charles, Dr. Adishina Akinwumi, the president of Africa Development Bank, sometime last week mentioned that we still have about 40% youth unemployment rate in Nigeria. Due to what? Due to lack of opportunities and due to lack of meritocracy, and of course declining the vagaries of the declining economy, which paints a gory picture of hopelessness, for the youth. And to that extent, people tend to go to where they believe those opportunities are better, and they'll be given the opportunity to participate and to perform. But more importantly, it is so bad that even the bandwidth of quote unquote to youth in these postulations even is beyond, the numbers you mentioned, because you see today the concept of Japaing has gone beyond the youth, and people in their 50s are even, taking off and leaving the country. And that spells, tells us the depth of the rot of the economy, a lack of what you call policy, strategy, policy, and the development cohesion with regards to how our leaders, lead us, in the country.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. So, I mean, Christian, on the one hand, you've essentially got a lot of young people who've invested a lot to get their professional degrees, and on the other hand, they don't have jobs, or they go into work that's below their qualifications and get very little pay. I think you economists call it disguised unemployment. And that's a big reason behind this Japa thing that Baba Yusuf was talking about, where a lot of people believe that there are greener pastures elsewhere.
Well, yes. Okay, it's a very complex issue, but it can be simplified.
Well, isn't it fairly straightforward? Give them jobs, good jobs, and they'll stay.
Well,
don't give them jobs,
well,
and they'll
yes,
go.
it is. But you see that we have just concluded elections at various levels of government in Nigeria, from local to national, and it has come and gone with all the issues, post-election issues that arise. But one of the most significant things that has puzzled me is that at almost every level of government, what has agitated the minds of the people is not the ideas of those who aspire to lead them, which is where these jobs creation initiatives will come from. Nobody in all the states of Nigeria. I mean, I've not had a predominance, even in the chat rooms, of people who are concerned that, somebody who didn't win, what will happen to his policy ideas and, his job creation initiative. There's no discussion along those lines. At the national level, it's similarly the same. So, if you are a youth in Nigeria and you're concerned about, your future, yes, you want to be concerned about the character of the person who wants to lead you. You want to be concerned about his integrity. You want to be concerned about his background and all of that. But at the same time, you want to know what his vision for you is. What is it that you're buying into? You know, I remember in the days of Awolowo and co, if you were voting for the UPN in those days, you knew what you were going to get. You were going to get a free education. You were going to get housing. You were going to get perhaps infrastructure. If you voted for MPN, you were going to get agriculture and all of those things. This is not the debate today, you know, so most people should not be concerned so seriously that what is most important in a democracy is missed. Because, you know, in the American format, the most popular candidate doesn't win. Okay, the Electoral College, the way it was set up, allowed the wealthy industrialist landowners, leaders in various states who were part of the early Electoral College to decide who becomes the president. Right. Now, we have
briefly, because I want to go to him.
Okay, so today in Nigeria, we have a formula where, you know, the man of the people may win the election because he's a populist. He has an agenda. The man for the people may not necessarily win because he is not so popular, but you know, his heart is in the right place. He wants to do the right things. I mean, we had 18 people who were running under different banners of various platforms of political parties, but their parties were perhaps not the most mainstream. Right. Nobody heard what ideas they had because nobody was interested in what they had to say. Even the debate platforms didn't bother fielding quite a few of them. So it is this kind of absence of clash of ideas, contest of superior initiatives for aggressive and advanced national development that is lacking. And that's at the heart of this economic problem where the youths post-election are now worried about what's going to happen. Where's the job?
So let me come to you, Baba Yusuf. How much should this be of concern to the new political leadership coming in? I mean, the issue of, you know, people leaving the country, brain drain and so on, both at the state and the federal level, because data shows that a staggering 69% of Nigerians would relocate outside the country if they're given the chance.
Well, absolutely. That spells doom to the polity, spells doom to Nigeria, because when these youth are this bracket of youths move out of the country, you are looking at another incubation period for another set of youths to come and fill in that. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have a national policy that will address that, you know, in the mid to long term. In the short term, we are having an incoming administration that is coming into socio-economic headwinds, all right, with the debt profile, with the debt to GDP ratios and all that. So what that leader needs is a vibrant, youthful citizenship that will support a new dispensation moving forward with a new thinking, new mindset, the agility and the energy and the intelligence to deliver those which were promised. In the case of the president-elect, you know, we saw the renewed hope document that was presented, majorly talking about youth empowerment and their involvement in taking the nation forward. The fourth industrial revolution, the employment of over 1 million youth into the ICT sector, using technology to drive governance and all that. Who is going to do that? It is the same 65%, you know, ratio you are talking about, 69 that are taking a flight out of the country. And when that happens, it's going to be a disaster, because you are left with an aging population that are thinking of retirement more than, you know, how to drive an economy. And then you have another bandwidth of population that are busy getting prepared, if you call it preparation, because we have issues with our educational sector, which has dilapidated, which the new administration has to address. So really, it spells doom unless and until the current or the incoming, you know, president and governors are able to review this and to now decide to hit the ground running, action plans that will be, you know, measurable, tangible, to move us forward.
That's a very good point. And Christian, we've got about a couple of minutes, sadly, left. But in addition to the things that Baba Yusuf was talking about, Nigeria is looking at very high inflation, high unemployment, and a cost of living crisis, which is making it difficult even for businesses to survive, let alone being able to create the kind of jobs that will hold back young Nigerians.
Well, Charles, we simply need ideas and policies and initiatives that will expansively and explosively expand the economy.
Yeah, but the problem is that they're not there. So what do we do if they're not there? I mean, that's the whole point.
Well, I think what the new governors and leaderships at the national level would have to do, really, is to draw on the capacity of talents that we have. And in the nation of 200 million plus people, there's not a shortage of talents. It's really about who the leader is comfortable having around him or her, as the case may be. But I believe that we need ideas that grow the economy, okay? Whatever Nigeria is owing today, the reason people are concerned and worried about it is that relative to the income, it's a heavy load. But if the revenue sources and revenue capacities are significantly expanded, and they can be and must be, because we have the resources and the capacity to do so, but if they are expanded, then suddenly there's massive wealth and the debt itself shrinks. If you owe 100 naira and your income is perhaps 150, you're very worried. But if you owe somebody 100 naira and your income goes up to, say, 10,000 naira, suddenly it feels like chicken change. So it is that kind of attitude that we must bring to governance. That's what the governors need, and that's what the president-elect and whoever he chooses to work with would need. You need people who, I mean, we have, take Enugu, for example, where you come from. Yeah, just one example from Enugu, where you're from. Enugu has coal, and for many years it's been abandoned both by the federal government and the state government. A state that is agitated about wealth should really make the federal government restless about how it is able to extract that wealth and turn it into resources, funds that are available for the state. The last time I checked, actually, the spot cost for a ton of coal was something in the region of about $400 and something dollars, okay? And Enugu has about 1.8 billion metric tons of coal.
That it's dirty energy.
Yes, because there are, well, even if it's dirty coal, there's still technology that is available to turn it into clean coal.
Right.
Now, if you multiply the cost of, I mean, the price of a ton of coal and to 1.8 billion, which is an established reserve from colonial times, not even based on modern research.
Right, very quickly.
You are looking at well close to well over $1 trillion, okay? That is at the feet of people walking past, driving past Enugu, and the entire coal geography in terms of the strategic reserve layout runs all the way from Benue to Delta.
Okay, just so, very, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. Briefly, a final word from you before we go.
Well, the president-elect and the governors-elect should start thinking of what I call the quick wins for the youth of Nigeria. We want to see 6 to 1 year tangible impact, to engender confidence and trust for people to take that leap of faith to give Nigeria a chance. We want to see that over and beyond manifestos that are mid to long term, to my mind, and sometimes actually ambiguous and undeliverable.
Okay, Baba Yusuf, who is a policy strategist, political commentator, and group CEO of the Global Investment and Trade Company, and Christian Udechukwu, who is an international economist, political and business analyst, and CEO at Business Africa Events Limited. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles, for having me.